Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson. It is week 2 of October, and already halfway over because of how you get it. Second week of spooky Halloween themed stories, and I have 3 ghost stories, kind of. I don't know. We'll see. We're looking at the stories of Thomas Millwood, Katie King, and our first story of the Cock Lane Ghost.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Going back to 1756, William Kent married Elizabeth Lynes and then moved to Stoke Ferry in England, where he operated the local inn and the post office. Unfortunately, Elizabeth died during childbirth, which, happened a lot, leaving Kent with Elizabeth's sister, Fanny, to take care of the house. Even worse, Kent's newborn son, who, was born when Elizabeth died, he also died a short time later. And really, that also happened a lot. I just can't imagine. We think about how bad things are now. 1800s, 1700s and beyond, just fraught with tragedy, right? You marry this girl, all right? And it's she's the least repulsive. And maybe you're the least repulsive. I don't want to make it seem like only women were repulsive back then. No one's got good hygiene. So you at least are attracted to each other's level of hygiene, right? And, you're full of hope. You get married. Everything's great. And then you have the horrifying decision. And it's not even really a decision. It's just the expectation that you're going to have kids. And guess what, man? Your bride, I wasn't going to say beautiful, but your bride, your relatively young 16-year-old bride, because that's when they had to get married back then, because life expectancy, right? And you're this strapping 25-year-old man, because probably, this is just how it was back then. And your bride, she gets pregnant, everybody's happy, everybody's having a good time, and then she dies. Or maybe by some miracle she lives, but then the baby dies. And babies died all the time, and it's probably just it's just like when milk goes bad, you're just well, guess what? Just throw this out and get another one. And then you just keep having kids. And then at some point, the woman just dies. Because I can't believe people have tons of kids. I don't understand these people who go out and have 5, 6, 8, 10 kids. I haven't had any myself, obviously, but my wife has had a couple, and I can't believe she wanted to do it again after the first time. What an idiot. I love you, but I don't understand why people want to keep doing that. And especially back in the 1700s where there's zero help at all, and they just keep doing it. And it's just that's just life. No, that's a horrible way to live. Anyway, that's beside the point. So William Kent, his wife and his son, they're both dead, which is just par for the course back then. So figuring Fanny was the next best thing, Fanny being his dead wife's sister, they began a relationship, but English laws at the time actually prohibited them from getting married because his former wife had already given birth, and that somehow meant that he couldn't marry her sister. I don't know. English laws are weird. Honestly, that seems pretty logical. Keep it in the family, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know why they were just no, you can't do that. Whatever. In January of 1759, Kent gave up the inn and post office in Stoke Ferry and moved to London alone. Fanny, however, didn't give up and sent several letters begging him to take her back. Kent eventually relented and had Fanny move out to London with him, where they began posing as a married couple. The two eventually met Richard Parsons, a singer at the Church of St. Sepulchre without Newgate. I hate, what are these English names? I've noticed this a lot as I've gotten deeper into English history. Like, it's like 3 words to name a place. It's Sepulchre without Newgate, and it's hyphenated. So it's like a 3-in-1 combo. Newcastle upon Tyne. Like anything that's on a river, it's blank upon blank. What are you doing? Stop. It's stupid. Just name a place 1 word, maybe 2. But that's it. Anyway, British people. Anyway, Parsons, not only was he the singer at this church, he was also the town's drunk and struggled to provide for his family. But somehow, Kent and Fanny were facing even harder times after multiple people, upon learning that they weren't actually married, refused to give them any place to stay because ain't gonna have no people living in sin in this house. You got to be married in order to touch a lady, as Jesus would have demanded. Whatever. Parsons offered the couple lodging at his home on Cock Lane, which is a 3-story home on a narrow side street in central London. In return, Kent loaned Parsons 12 guineas. So, that's weird, right? I guess Kent and Fanny have a lot of money. He sold his inn in the post office, I guess, or something. I don't know. He made a lot of good money back in Stokes Ferry. So, he's got money, but, no one will give them a place to stay. He will be like, I will pay you all of my guineas. Just give us a place to stay. And people are like, no, you're not married. Get out on the street, you dirty sinners, whatever. And then they get the town drunk. And he's like, yeah, man, I'll give you a place to stay. Just whatever. Just give me something to drink. And so, whatever. A few weeks later, while Kent was out of town for a wedding, Fanny and Richard Parsons' daughter, Elizabeth, began hearing scratching and rapping noises on the walls at their house in Cock Lane. Parsons' wife assumed it was their neighbor who was a cobbler, but they kept hearing the noises even when the cobbler wasn't working. Cobbler's a shoe guy, right? Anyway, James Franzen, the landlord of a nearby building, claimed to see a white figure ascend the stairs of the Parsons house, with Parsons himself later claiming to see one as well. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, Fanny was super pregnant at the time with Kent's baby and getting ready to burst when she began having serious health complications. Now, that happened all the time. Is it coincidence? Probably. She eventually died of smallpox on February 2nd, 1760, leaving Kent as a double widower, even though they technically weren't married, but basically they were. Common law. When Fanny's family found out about her will that left practically everything to Kent, they made several efforts to sue him for her inheritance that should have never legally been his in the first place because obviously they weren't married. Between lawsuits with Fanny and a suit against Richard Parsons for not repaying the loan that Kent had previously given him, Kent had a lot going on while continuing to live at the Cock Lane house. He eventually settled the suit with Parsons in January of 1762, but the strange noises and activity continued in the Cock Lane house, mostly coming from Elizabeth Parsons, who was Richard's daughter. Other noises, which included something that sounded like a cat scratching a chair, got so annoying that Richard Parsons hired a carpenter to remove the siding from Elizabeth's bed to see if something had gotten trapped underneath. When that search turned up nothing, Richard turned to John Moore, an associate preacher at St. Sepulchre's, who had already noted that the house was actively being haunted by Kent's first wife, Elizabeth. Moore then concluded that Fanny had joined her in haunting the house and had an important message for them. They just didn't know what it was because apparently ghosts, they can appear in front of people, they just can't talk to them because that's the rules of ghosts, maybe? I don't know. Parsons and Moore quickly set up a knocking system to communicate with the ghost. 1 knock meant yes, 2 knocks meant no. Using this system, the two came to understand that Fanny had been murdered and that Elizabeth's ghost, who James Franzen had allegedly seen when I mentioned him earlier, she had appeared to warn her sister of her own impending murder. The two then made the huge leap in logic that Fanny had not actually died from smallpox, but from arsenic poisoning, and that Kent had been the one to poison her. Even more, Anne Lines, Fanny's other sister, told the men that Kent had refused to let anyone see inside the coffin at Fanny's funeral. So, logically, Fanny's body would have shown signs of scarring from the smallpox, but if she had in fact been poisoned, there wouldn't have been anything to see. Moore, who was super skeptical that ghosts were actually talking to him, reached out to Methodist minister Thomas Broughton to investigate. So he comes in, spends some time in the house, and Broughton left convinced that it was haunted. News about the Cock Lane ghosts then quickly spread throughout London. The Public Ledger ran several stories about Moore's and Parsons' experiences, and the city as a whole began to believe that Kent had actually murdered Fanny. Now, Kent, he's adamant that he was innocent, and he worked with John Moore to conduct a seance at the house. Moore soon began communicating with the ghost using the knock system, and as they already knew, were told that Kent had poisoned Fanny. Moore then asked if Kent should be hanged, to which it gave a single knock to indicate no. So that's weird. 6 days later, the group held another seance where as many as 20 people gathered to watch the ghost communicate. Another seance was held the next day at a different home just to see if the ghosts were traveling back and forth, but there weren't any knocking sounds. So clearly, guys, the Cock Lane house was super haunted. As interest in this story grew, more priests and journalists got involved. Additional seances were held, but oftentimes the ghosts never communicated, which is weird. Why wouldn't the ghosts communicate? They've got a whole captive audience now. So, because of that, skeptics began to believe that Richard and Elizabeth Parsons were behind all of the knocking. Elizabeth was even tested independently, where some claimed that she had been holding a small piece of wood and was using that to make all of the noises. On February 25th, Kent and a group of supporters went to Fanny's burial site and had the undertaker exhume her corpse to prove that she had truly died of smallpox. That was enough to have John Moore, Richard and Elizabeth Parsons, and 2 others arrested for the entire conspiracy. Their trial began 5 months later as Kent and several others gave testimonies as to what they believed really happened. In all 5 of those people were found guilty. 2 additional people were found guilty the following week of defaming Kent. All 5 were committed to King's Bench Prison until they could come to an agreement on how much they should pay Kent in restitution. Richard Parsons, who claimed to profess innocence and adamantly claimed there was really a ghost in his house, was then just given a 2-year prison sentence. Moving on to November of 1803, when several people in the Hammersmith area of London began claiming that they were attacked by the ghost of a man who had committed suicide the previous year. Sometimes the ghost appeared to be very tall and dressed in all white, as, stereotypical ghosts do. Other times, this ghost wore a calfskin robe and had horns and large eyes, like a demon, like metal, hardcore demon. Anyway, 2 women were allegedly grabbed by the ghost and died from shock a few days later. Because again, it's the 1800s, man. Women just be fainting and getting shocked all the time. 2 men on different occasions also encountered the ghost. However, since London lacked an organized police force at the time, I don't know why, probably because they're off fighting some war somewhere, citizens took matters into their own hands by forming armed patrols in the area in hopes of catching the ghost. Well, around 11 p.m. on January 3rd, 1804, 29-year-old Francis Smith was patrolling the area with a shotgun when he came across Thomas Millwood. Millwood was a bricklayer and was wearing all white, as bricklayers did, and was heading home after visiting his parents and his sister. Smith, thinking that Millwood was the ghost, called out to him. "Damn you, where are you and what are you?" shouted Smith. That was pretty spot on. English accent. I think I nailed it this week. Anyway, Millwood, however, didn't realize that Smith was talking to him and continued on. But Smith calls out again, "Damn you! I'll shoot you!" And then guess what? When Millwood didn't respond, Smith shot him in the face, killing him. How do you, and at some point, Millwood's got to at least just acknowledge, hey, buddy, why are you yelling? Who are you yelling at? I'm looking around. It's almost midnight. There can't be anyone else out on the street. Are you talking to me? But no. So Smith just walks up and shoots this dude in the face, obviously killing him. You don't just take a shotgun blast directly to the face and live unless you're that guy that Dick Cheney shot, but he just kind of grazed him. So Millwood, shot in the face, dies. Nearby witnesses rushed out to the scene and told Smith to just go home while they transported Millwood's body to a nearby inn where it could be examined by a surgeon. Instead, Smith was arrested and charged with willful murder. The jury at Smith's trial, who knew about the ghost and believed that Smith was a good person, tried to instead convict him of manslaughter, which would have been a lesser charge. However, the judge informed them that Smith must either be convicted of murder or be acquitted because the alleged existence of a ghost was completely irrelevant to the story. And I don't know if I would word it that way, but I mean, he's got a point, right? You can't just murder someone and say that you did it because there was allegedly a ghost in the area. Ghosts not having been fully proven, you can't just reduce a charge. Because now, granted, let's say that there was a serial rapist walking around and everybody's on high alert for this serial rapist. At that point, you could reduce the charge because you had, a more provable thing that, are there, but not a ghost. So, that being said, the jury then convicted Smith of murder and he was sentenced to hanging and dissection. Smith was immediately appealed to King George III, who then commuted the sentence to just a year's hard labor. So apparently the king believed in ghosts. Our final story, beginning in 1870, 14-year-old Florence Cook began claiming to have mediumistic abilities and began working with other established mediums, including Frank Hearn, who claimed to have materialized the spirit of a man named John King. On December 9th, 1873, at the parish church of St. John at Hackney in Middlesex, England, Cook held a seance with attorney William Volkman and others in which the spirit of Katie King, John King's daughter, materialized. As was customary during a seance, King's spirit then held the hands of those participating. Now, I want to note, John King was actually what was known as a spirit control, which is a powerful spirit that organizes the appearance of other spirits at a seance. King was actually the spirit of Henry Morgan, a famous Welsh buccaneer known for raiding various Caribbean ports in the mid-1600s. All of that means nothing. All right, because none of this is real. All right, let's just call it for what. These mediums, they're like, yeah, we can talk to ghosts and such. And then they're just like, yeah, look at this dude that we materialized, except it's not really the dude that says he is. He's just kind of like this spirit control, and he's just kind of like organizing. He's kind of the conduit between our world and the spirit world, and he's just kind of organizing all of the people who come to the seances. And so this dude, he's got a daughter. But again, it's not really his daughter because he's just kind of the conduit, but it's going to be his daughter. And so he's really this pirate who was died in the Caribbean or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's so just whatever, man. So William Volkman, being the skeptical and analytical lawyer that he was, accused the spirit of Katie King of actually being Florence Cook, this, the 15-year-old girl that I mentioned up front, and pretending that, she was pretending to just be this ghost. Volkman grabbed the spirit's hand, quote unquote, the spirit's hand and waist, and tried to wrestle her to the ground. However, the other participants of the seance just grabbed the ghost and then stuffed her inside a cabinet that Cook conveniently emerged from a few minutes later. Weird, right? So, they're in this seance. This skeptical lawyer is like, oh, yeah, that's not a ghost. That's this 15-year-old girl pretending to be a ghost. I've lost the English accent again. I'm so disappointed. I had it, and I lost it. Anyway, no, it's not a ghost. It's just this 15-year-old girl. I'm going to wrestle her to the ground. It's kind of assault, but whatever. And then the other people in the seance are like, no, it's really this ghost. We're going to just hide her away into this closet. We're going to stuff a ghost into a closet. Interesting. And then all of a sudden, this 15-year-old girl just comes out just a few minutes later. Interesting. Volkman promptly went out and published a story asserting that Florence Cook was a fraud. Meanwhile, Cook's supporters in turn denounced Volkman, saying that he had broken the agreement of conducting proper seance etiquette, whatever that means. What's proper seance etiquette? To say a whole bunch of trash that never actually happened? Oh, God. Cook's supporters later discovered that Volkman was associated with another medium named Mrs. Guppy, who had wished to ruin Florence Cook's reputation. They also claimed that the materialized spirits borrowed energy from their medium, so of course Katie King would look and act and sound exactly like Florence Cook, because obviously, you guys. So basically, I can just go out and say, like, hey guys, I'm a medium now. I'm going to materialize the spirit, and then I'm just going to bring my kid into the room, and everybody's going to be like, wow, that really looks like your kid. Well, of course it's going to look like my kid. All right. The spirits are going to take the form of the conduit that they are taking form. So, like, yes, it looks like my kid, but I have really materialized the spirit of Charles Manson. So take it or leave it. I'm doing the best I can here. Oh, God. Despite all of this very sound reasoning, Cook's reputation was damaged by this incident, forcing her to turn to Sir William Crookes, a respected physicist, to prove that all of this was actually real. I can't believe they're still pushing this. Crookes had spent the last couple of years investigating the alleged paranormal phenomena that spiritualist mediums were producing by allowing mediums to conduct seances in his house, but under his very specific conditions. Now, Florence Cook, who is now 15, I think I said she was early, but she was 14 when we started, and she's 15 now. She went to Crookes' house and allegedly materialized the spirit of Katie King again. This time, King walked around the house, talked, allowed herself to be weighed and measured, and held a baby. Although most of the seances were conducted in very dim light, because those were the rules, King's spirit did materialize in enough light for photographs to be taken, and you can go find these photographs of Katie King, Florence Cook, and to see a ghost for yourself, allegedly. A lot of people say, hey, look, this is photographic evidence of an actual ghost. So you can go Google Katie King ghost, and there it is. And it's not Florence Cook at all, allegedly, whatever. At another seance in 1874, King joined another spirit, Florence Maple, who had been materialized by another medium. Each time King's spirit materialized, she always looked slightly different than Florence Cook, with varying height and weight, as well as a larger face and different hair and skin, allegedly. Cook and her supporters took this evidence that Florence Cook couldn't have possibly been posing as Katie King, and that everything was totally for real. King's final appearances for Florence Cook came in May of 1874 at her home in Hackney. During the seance, King emerged in a different room while Cook laid on the floor of the bedroom with her head covered by a shawl. Convenient. Sir William Crookes, who attended this seance, noted that he had seen both King and Cook very clearly in different rooms, and he published a report later that year claiming that Cook, along with other mediums Kay Fox and Daniel Douglas Home, were actually producing genuine preternatural phenomena, with his specific testimony about Katie King causing the most controversy in England about all of this. Eventually, news of Katie King's spirit actually reached the United States, where Jenny and Nelson Holmes began claiming to have materialized her there. Robert Dale Owen, a former Indiana congressman, actually wrote an article in Atlantic Monthly about his experience seeing King's spirit in 1875. However, just before the article was published, Eliza White came out saying that she had been masquerading as King and had been photographed by the Holmes and their agents. Although the exposure painted many spiritualists as frauds, the Holmes came out saying that they had only hired Eliza White to pose as Katie King because they hadn't wanted to photograph the real spirit, since the bright flash of the camera would have ruined the materialization. Guys! We were trying this silly thing on our part. We shouldn't have done it. But we were trying to show evidence that we did. So we hired this lady and said it was the spirit, but we couldn't have photographed the real spirit, you guys, because it would have messed up whatever was going on there, because ghosts and cameras can't be in the same room together or something. I don't know. They also claimed that Eliza White, once she understood what she was doing, then decided to extort money from the Holmeses and sell the story to the press to then ruin their reputation. The Holmeses are innocent victims in all this, guys. We were trying to do a good thing, and then it got twisted. The media ruined our reputation. We were just trying to do a good thing for the public and show that there was a ghost that we had actually materialized, because we totally did that. Anyway, all of that was believable enough, and the Holmeses actually returned to claiming to speak to ghosts and spirits. To this day, many people believe that Katie King's spirit, even though she was somehow being able to materialize in England and in the United States, a lot of people believe that's totally real and not the work of just various nefarious spiritualists faking this phenomena to make money.
All done.
All right, part 4 of Ghosts in the Books, all in England. This time, I didn't do that on purpose, but I don't know, whatever. Let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, there was a ghost in Cock Lane. Yeah. No, it wasn't. It was just this town drunk and his wife making knocking noises to try to frame this dude for murder, even though he didn't. They just probably mad at him because he didn't actually marry Fanny, but had a kid with her or was about to, but then I guess that baby died. I don't know. Never got an update on what happened to the baby that Fanny was about to have, but when she died of smallpox. I'm assuming that the baby also died, because why would it live? It's the 1700s. None of them did. I mean, obviously some of them did, because obviously we wouldn't be here today. You get it. Anyway, beside the point. Number 2, Thomas Millwood. He's just a little bricklayer in London, and then and everybody's like, nah, dude, there's a ghost hanging around the Hammersmith area. We're gonna go find it. And then this dude was like, oh, hey, you the ghost. I've got him. I don't know why I can only channel his accent. Whatever. And then Thomas Millwood just shot in the face. And dude kind of gets convicted of murder, but then the king is like, nah, it's cool, dude. Hard labor for a year. You're good. Number 3, Katie King. Was this an actual spirit that was materialized by mediums, or was it all a big hoax because you can't communicate with the dead for a variety of reasons? We're not going to get into this deep philosophical discussion on what happens when we die, but I can tell you with a pretty good amount of confidence and zero scientific evidence to suggest otherwise, you can't talk to ghosts.
What did we learn?
Next week on the show, we're going back to one story, one big old creepy Halloween themed story, and we are looking at Ernie Rivers and the Project Poltergeist. There's a black kid and a black family who thought they were haunted by a demon. And look, this is not an original thought, but black people have had a lot happen to them in our society. You get black people claiming that they're haunted by demons and ghosts, you probably take them seriously, because they've got too much other stuff to worry about to also be worried about paranormal. And so this is an interesting story of Ernie Rivers and what was going on with him, and we will look at that next week. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast.